Hi, and thank you for joining the Urban Counseling Clique. My name is April Givens. I'm your host, psychotherapist, and today we have with us on the panel Mr. Hilton Young, qualified mental health professional, Alejandro Zavala, psychotherapist, and Pastor Chester McGowan. Today we are going to talk about how to love yourself. Oftentimes, we tell people you have to love yourself first in order to be able to love someone else. But how do I do that? How do I love myself? So we have a panel of men today that are going to give us a perspective of loving yourself. So let's begin.
Well, first of all, I think that knowing what love is the first and the key and the quintessential thing of being able to love yourself. And the way I view love is in a holistic acceptance of yourself, body, mind, and spirit. Loving your body, regardless of the status quo of what society say your body should be. Loving the way you think, thinking outside of the box, whether you be a geek, whether you be a nerd, or whether you be the in crowd person. Loving yourself wholeheartedly, feeling an affection that you have for yourself. If you don't have a certain type of affection, if you don't feel an affection and acceptance of yourself, then you can't love yourself in that kind of way. And so if there's certain parts of yourself that you do not love, and you try to gain acceptance by other people liking you and loving you, then you neglect yourself for the sake of trying to please somebody else. And normally, me as a people pleaser, and I'm still struggling with that today, I what I do is I distance myself from other parts of my life that I don't want people to see, which I'm still working on. But there's certain areas of my life that I still have struggled with. And so being accepting of that is the best thing that you can do in order to love yourself holistically. And so that's my thing on how to love yourself. You can't worry about what other people think of you, particularly if it's a way that criticizes you, that degrades you, that downgrades you, that tears you down, and so you have to learn how to love you and the way you need to be loved, and not love you the way other people think you should be loved. So that's my take on it.
Okay, let's define love. Let's chime in. What is love?
And I think love, to me, has always been one of those concepts that is, and because it's a construct, it doesn't, it's not something material that we can say, this is like, a table or something that we can actually see or touch. Everybody perceives it or sees it differently. So one of the very first disconnect that happens among people is when, we talked about love, thinking that it's a universal understanding. We all have, I guess, the basic notion of what it's supposed to be, but not everybody sees it or defines it the same way. And a lot of the times that misunderstanding of what you mean by love and what I mean by love can cause a barrier. And if I'm trying to tell you need to love yourself, what that person may, what that means to that person may be not the same that it means to me. So it's, I think more than overall a definition is with each individual try to understand what love means to that person. Somebody who says that they're having trouble loving themselves, I think it goes deeper than that. Not just there may be aspects of themselves that they like. There may be aspects of themselves that they don't like, and so it's maybe I think I'm a good professional. I just don't like my physique, my body. Or perhaps I, don't think that I push enough in my career, that kind of thing. So it's my take is trying to understand individually what's love for a specific person.
Okay.
Well, when I think of love, I define it first of all through Scripture, to know that love is a feeling. It's an emotion, and that we all are moved by emotions. But one of the things that the Bible teaches us is there's so much, and without getting into any hermeneutics or any doxology, I would just use the word that love never fails, meaning that even though we fall, even though we make mistakes, God never forgive us, never get to a point where he don't forgive us for our shortcomings and our falls and our mistakes. It reminds me of a grandmama. You know, I made some mistakes and I did some bad things, but grandmama kept on loving, you know, and love will discipline you. Love will love you enough to know that you need whooping. And you chasing those you love. So it's a feeling that never fails in spite of what you do, in spite of how awful you are. Love keeps on loving. It never fails. And that's the true example of love when I think about love, because, you know, we hear, according to the world, there's a thin line between love and hate, where someone can love you today and hate you based on something that you said or something that you done. That's love that's based on an emotion of whether or not it's predicated on how you make me feel.
Exactly.
And with love, when you love somebody, even though you can hate what they do, you still keep on loving the individual, because my love is predicated on I truly love you. So I think it's an emotion that sometimes can get tossed to and fro, as we are tossed to and fro with how we feel, and understand and define what love truly is.
Okay. And you made a great point. I think a lot of times we struggle with love because of how that, like you said, how that other person makes us feel. You know, a lot of times our love is conditional. It's based on how you feel about me. If you don't love me, I don't love myself. But I'm walking around, I'm depressed, I'm upset, I'm angry because this person don't love me anymore. They're taking my love from me because they don't love me. So I'm looking at how can I, as a female, as a male who's having these problems, that I'm basing, you know, the what I call love is on how another person reacts to me. So how can I get out of that? You know, what type of help can we offer?
Well, it comes back, you know, to self-acceptance. We have a person, let's say we have a person that's been raised by a mom who was a prostitute and dad was a drug dealer, and the only thing she knows is how to love in the way they know how to love. This can be her interpretation of love, as Alejandro mentioned. This can be her interpretation of love, but if she accepts who she is as a person and love herself, that can be her definition of love without conditions. But this is her perception and this is her interpretation of love. If she loves herself in that way, who are we to say, oh, she don't love herself because she's prostituting on the street? But if that's all she knows and that's the only exception that she has, although we may not think she's loving herself, she may just be quite all right with it. And so self-acceptance is one of the things, you know, Brene Brown mentioned something in her book, Gifts of Imperfection. She said, when we spend a lifetime trying to distance ourselves from the parts of our lives that does not fit in with who we think we're supposed to be, we stand outside of our own stories and we hustle for worthiness. And we do this by performing, pleasing, perfecting, and proving, and pretending to be someone that we're not. So if this is who this girl is, and this is who she has accepted herself, and whether we feel like she's loving herself or not, if this is what she knows to be love, then she loves herself regardless of whether we think she's wrong or not. It's self-acceptance. It's accepting yourself holistically and wholeheartedly and affectionately, regardless of how your action prove. Because love, although we like to say love is a verb, it's a noun before it's a verb. Right. I mean, you have to know what the noun is before you can do the action, because you can do all the actions in the world and still not have the noun in you. You know what I'm saying? And her actions may not be conducive to what we feel like her insides is, but I mean, her insides and the way she feel about herself may contradict what her actions may be. So that's why I feel like self-acceptance is one of the things. You know, if you do not accept yourself for who you are and where you are right now, then how can you love yourself enough to be able to make the changes if you don't love yourself right now where you are? You know, one of the things I was telling my wife, you know, my wife got the gastric bypass surgery, and she was 332 pounds before she lost the weight. She was a 28, and now she's a 16 and a 14. And what I told her is, if you don't love and accept yourself now, you're going to still feel like you're 332 pounds, even if you lose the weight. And now she's maybe 195 now, and she had such a big girl complex that even today she still struggles with how she sees herself, because because for so long she's tried to live up to the status quo. And I told her before she lost the weight, babe, don't lose that weight if you don't love yourself right now. And she struggled. Now she's a lot better now. But this is one of the struggles that she had with losing the weight. I wish she was here to tell her story, because she tells her story quite well, better than I do. But if you view yourself to be a certain way at 332 pounds, you're going to view yourself that same way, because the change has to happen from the inside out, not the outside in. You know what I'm saying? And so she made a bunch of alterations, but she never made the change. And so you could take a suit to a cleans to get altered, but when you pick up that suit, you're picking up the same suit. And so until you make the change, you're going to continue to make alterations, until you start making a change. It doesn't matter if you got the clothes, the makeup, the shoes, and all of the glamorous external things that we see. If the change is not internal, you're just still making alterations.
So it all comes down from the mental aspect. I mean, just like you said, you have to lose weight mentally before you can lose it physically. Because a lot of times you lose the weight and you gain it all back because you're not mentally there yet. It's an emotional thing. A lot of times, just like with the love aspect, people have these problems and it stems from other things, like you said, the childhood, the prostitution, the things like that. Women are in relationships that are abusive relationships, but if he loves me, this is how he shows me that he loves me. If he's hitting me, that's how I know he loves me. So how do we as professionals be able to tell our people to how to get out of these types of situations, to start off with loving yourself? I guess that's the issue that I'm trying to dive into. We have the definitions of love and how love is, from everybody's perspective. But how do we now begin to understand, okay, what do I need to do to love myself? To love myself enough to get me through everything that I've been going through, be it the prostitution, be it the domestic violence, be it the relationship, spousal abuse, cheating, whatever. How do I love me so I won't have to endure any of these things that are happening in my relationship?
One of the things that I found out just doing even counseling, a lot of people don't love themselves based on where they are. And they let their situation and their circumstances dictate where they are, as they hate where they are, and because of that they hate themselves. And because they believe it's because of the decisions they made and the choices that they made that it got them to a place where they are, and they can't get past that in order to move forward. And I think one of the things that helps us to begin to love ourselves where we are is to understand, this is me, I've done this, so now I must move forward. And it comes from relationship with understanding who I am. Because it's hard to love yourself if you can't stand where you are. Because you will equate the two with one another to say, just because I'm where I am, I don't like where I am and I don't like me as well.
Yeah.
So it's a mindset. As he opened the door to talk about, the mindset has to go with everything, because there are guys that really think they love their girl by showing abuse because they seen their father do it. They seen other guys do it, and they thought that was a way of showing love. And at the same time, it's a perception of what love is based on false. So I believe once we identify that my circumstances, my situation don't dictate who I am, but if I can love myself through it to understand what love is, then I can start where I'm at in order to move forward. And when you understand what love is, you have to love yourself. Just say that I've set goals, I'm going to do this, in spite of what mistakes I've made, that I've got to move from where I am in order to move forward. And one of the things, love grows as you begin to move forward. Sure. You begin to do small things and begin to accomplish goals, and by accomplishing them goals, you begin to fall in love with yourself even more because I've made it. I've done this, and it's a growth.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, I actually, as you were saying this, I was thinking, basically, doing things or allowing things in my life that will help me achieve self-realization, or like achievement, or what I expect for myself to be, what it means to me, for me to be happiness. Only allowing those things in my life and doing those things for me is when I can say that I love myself. We were saying earlier, there's a lot of cases in which women that are in relationships, and this is just because it's a very specific example, that they're in relationships, abusive relationships, and they think they're happy. They think like, this is who I am, and this is how he shows it, like love, he cares and loves me, and yeah, sometimes he beats me, but then he comes and he says that he's sorry, for example. But if he leaves me, or if I leave, then I don't have anybody, nobody's gonna love me. And they think that that's as far as they can aspire to be, that's as happy as they can aspire to be. And even though they may think that they're happy, they may say, I'm happy the way things are, not necessarily this shows that, I guess, this person is allowing positive things. Positive, I mean things that help to fulfill her. Like what if she always wanted to be a professional, but in her relationship she cannot be because she has to stay at home. Well, things that will actually will help her achieve those dreams that maybe she's always had, or he. I'm saying she, but he happens in hell too. Or things that will create positive changes or positive goals for the person. That's the kind of thing I think will help the individual say, yes, this shows that I actually love myself. Because keeping it in an abstract realm, it's always going to be difficult. Because some people may say, well, I love myself because I go to the gym all the time and see how I look. And this not necessarily is all what it means.
Exactly.
It goes back to relationship.
Yeah,
I could meet G.I. Soldier right now, and it could be a genuine like. And the more we spend together, the more time we commune with one another, the more time we talk, it eventually grows. And because of relationship, it begins to grow into another thing where it changes from like to, hey man, that's my dude, I love this guy, because of relationship.
Exactly.
And if we can have a relationship with ourselves, we can love ourselves even more by growing within ourselves to understand, hey, this is who I am. I might not like it, but the things I don't like, I can change.
Okay.
If I decide to change it, and that's where you begin to have a relationship. It's even a relationship with Christ. The more we become a relationship with Him, the more we understand what love is, because we begin to see it, how it works in our life.
Exactly. And I think we begin to see that, we can love ourselves despite, of everything else that's happening around us. Regardless of if I'm with Him or if I'm not, I'm still going to be happy. Right. That's the key right there that, I really want to kind of get, I guess, the feedback on, and just the step one, what is it that we as human beings, male, female, that can do to begin to start to help ourselves get busy. I think when I say get busy, meaning getting busy in, in your life, and what is it that you're doing. So a lot of times we put so much on hold with going to school, or, writing a book, or taking a class, or exercising, or whatever, because we're so caught up in the relationship, or making this relationship work, or looking a certain way for this person, to that we are forgetting how to live. We're forgetting about ourselves. So when I say get busy, the first step is getting busy in, doing things for us that, we like, that maybe we fell short doing. Going to the mall, shopping, getting your hair done, getting your nails done, taking a class, eating right, different things that we can kind of pull into loving ourselves and helping ourselves to where we're not so focused on how this other person making us feel or feeling about us.
Right.
Yes, but we still have to have that in us internally. We can go out and do all of these things, get your nails done, and do things, dress yourself right, treat yourself to dinner, take yourself out on a date. We can do all these things, but if you don't have that in here, what good does it do to do all these other external, superficial things when the internal issue is still that you don't love yourself? And so, in order to attack the abuse or the prostitute and all other stuff, I mean, you have to be able to meet that person right where they are. Ask them about the abuse. How do you feel abuse is to you? Do you like the abuse that's going on with you? And if you don't like it, what are you willing to do about it? Because loving yourself in a simplest form is just making a decision to want to do so.
Yes, sir.
And so when you talking about how to love yourself, I changed that question. I changed the word how to when. When are you ready to start loving yourself?
But when you're tired, when you get to the point that you are sick and tired of being sick and tired, now you can't do nothing but change. And a lot of times that's hard. Change is hard. Change is hard for a lot of people. Because we're wondering, okay, how do I do? Now I'm tired of doing the same thing over and over again. I'm tired of looking this way. I'm tired of getting into failed relationship after failed relationship after failed relationship. Now I'm tired. So how can I do something different? When is it time for me to do something different?
You said something that's so important is you said you want to change, but how many of us know that we're creatures of habit? And one of the hardest things to do is to change. And even when you change, you're always going backwards. So you end up making a circle because you're changing, then you're going back, then you're changing, then you're going back. So all you're doing is making a big circle. Because we are creatures of habit, in order to do things different, there has to be different things that we do. But it also has to do with a lot of people, a lot of places you connect yourself with and connect yourself to. Because if I don't know how to love myself, I need to get around somebody that do love themselves.
Okay.
That's good. That's good.
Real good.
Now, here's the deal. When I facilitated a psychoeducation group at my last job, and one of my clients who was addicted to meth, addicted to heroin, chronically homeless, schizophrenic, bipolar, and all these things wrong. One of the major things that always stuck with me in facilitating these groups, he said, in order to make that change as it relates to loving yourself, you have to change people,
Yes.
places, and things. If you don't make that change, then I don't care how sick and tired you claim to be, you are not sick and tired until you change these three things. If you don't change people, places, and things, you ain't sick and tired. Because I hear sick and tired of being sick and tired all the time, and there's a lot of people that's just not sick and tired of being sick and tired. They may be tired, they may be aggravated, they may be frustrated, but sick and tired just don't mean sick and tired no more.
Right.
So. And so the question is, when are you willing to make the decision to want to love yourself? You know what I'm saying? Because the how-to would never come about unless you're ready to make the decision to do it. And a lot of people want to say how because they want to continue doing what they're doing at that time and then try to love themselves at the same time. Well, it's a proven scientific fact that no two things can occupy the same space at the same time. And so you can't really want to make this change and still want to keep your same habits, like Pastor Media habits around, and we are creatures of habits. And so the question is, are you willing to change everything that has been habitual in your life from this point to this point? And it is just a decision. Case in point, I have a 9-year-old sitting right there. His birthday is next month on the 15th. I have a 9-year-old living in New Orleans. Her birthday is in March the 17th. He'll be 10 in February, she'll be 10 in March. Now, of course, they don't take no rocket scientists to figure out what kind of life I led before God delivered me to here. And it was just the decision to want to change my whole environment in order to be where I'm at right now. Because if not, I'll still be doing what I'm doing.
I think a lot of the times also the person don't believe, a lot of people, they don't believe that they deserve to love themselves. They should because that's what they're told. That's because I hear my therapist telling me that I should in order to be happy. But like you said, internally they don't really believe it. So until this thought or this belief that they don't deserve, to love themselves, or they don't have reasons to love themselves, or they don't have anything to love about themselves, this belief comes from somewhere. You know, so I think that one of the first steps will be that the person to start understanding their ideas and start challenging themselves and say, okay, so all this time I believe that I don't deserve it, or this time I believe that I'm not a good person. So let's challenge that thought and see where does that come from? Is that true, and why is it true? You know, that would be, I guess, a good start point.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then we could talk about the prostitute and abuser and all other stuff, but what about the person that's been in church for 25, 30 years, praising the Lord and all stuff, and still don't love themselves?
It's true.
I mean, you got to attack that too, because I mean, a lot of people a lot of people dismiss themselves and mistake that as humility and all other stuff, but humility in dismissing yourself from what God has for you because you don't feel like you deserve it because you're trying to stay in this position of humility don't necessarily mean that you love yourself just because you've been in church. I mean, you got to attack that from all spectrums
right.
and all corners of the church, because all
Right.
corners of the world, because there's a lot of people at church that don't love themselves.
Right.
And you can praise the Lord, hallelujah, wave your hand and all other stuff, but that don't mean you got love in you. So that means you just playing a role. You know, don't profess to be what your heart does not possess you to be.
That's good,
Bottom line. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people boldly profess to be something that their heart does not, that they don't have no possession in their heart. You got profession, you verbalize, you make people think this is who you are at church or at work or at whatever building you at. But really, behind closed doors, you ain't got none of that in your heart. You're just faking a fraud.
It's true. Wow. Powerful. So we're going to have to do a part 2 to this discussion because we hit home on a lot of different issues. So we're going to wrap it up right now, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's been awesome. If you have anything that you would like to comment on that we talked about, or if you would like to give us a topic to discuss, email us at urbancounselingclique@gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you.